with the border war, and certainly was an exciting atmosphere. It was a disappointing result, but I think without question Colorado State is a really good football program. You know, the team that I coached against a couple of years ago is significantly different, so kudos to them as they make their way through the rest of the league. We've got to get ready for a big ball game against Fresno State. We're banged up. We've got a lot of different injuries, so we're coming up with a plan to put the best guys on the field and come up with a plan to win the game. So at this time, I know we have some conference calls, so I'll go ahead and take them.
Coach Moss from the Denver Post.
You bet, Irv.
How you doing today?
Good, Irv. Were you the fellow that asked me about the receivers, how they were the best receivers that we had faced?
Yeah.
You know what? And I think I mentioned, yeah, they were great, but Oregon might have been a little bit better. But after going through that tape, I think Colorado State's really got a couple excellent players. So it's good to put a face and a name together, Irv.
Yeah, you did point out that you felt that was the best group that you've seen in the conference.
Yes, without question. Yep.
Okay. Coming off of that game, were you encouraged a little bit by the way Wyoming finished the game, put together some drives and some points there late in the game? Was that encouraging for you?
Well, it certainly is. I mean, you always are looking for positives, you know, and within every game there are silver linings. I think to just whitewash everything and say, well, we scored a bunch of points in the second half, so we're a really good football team right now would be an overstatement. But certainly to have a football team that stayed in the fight, even on defense and in the kicking game, was encouraging. You know, a lot of these guys, Irv, that are in our program really didn't know us coaches as we came in several months ago. And so, you know, in the short amount of time and in short order for them to get to buy in and to keep competing, I think that's a really important factor. And the point total, if you look at how it went in the second half, is something that we're going to build on. But I want to be real clear on this. You won't find our coaching staff to be one of saying, well, shoot, you know what, we outscored them in the second half, so it's a moral victory. That's not where we're at. But I will note that I've been around enough college football teams when some teams have turned south and you don't have that will-come attitude and that fight. And the whole game and right up until the last 15 seconds, you know, after we scored the final touchdown, I felt like our team was not felt. We were engaged and they were competing, and so we'll build on that.
Okay. How do you look at the rest of the season? Now it's getting down a little bit to, I guess, what we call the nitty-gritty as far as bowl eligibility and that sort of thing. Do you look at the rest of the season as certainly some must-wins in there to get to that point?
Well, that's a great question, and that's really not where we're at right now. As I mentioned, going into the Colorado State game, our focus was specifically on Colorado State. I think there's so many building blocks that we have within our program. It would be somewhat, I guess, short-sighted for us to say, okay, we have X number of games to get in a bowl game, and we need to do this or that. Our main focus is to be very laser-like focused on Fresno State. What we need to do to improve from this last week's performance, because there's certainly areas that we've got to improve. And what personnel groupings are we going to have because of the, you know, some of the injuries that we encountered in the Colorado State game. And so while the question is you know, legitimate, it's not one that is real relevant to where we're at specifically with the Wyoming Cowboys. Our focus is on the Fresno State Bulldogs.
okay, anyone that's out or what?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of guys that are out, and it's probably good that you bring in the question because beyond the other people on the line here, there's a whole group of people that have some of the same questions. Sean Wick, I think, will be out at least 4 weeks, maybe longer, but at least 4 weeks. So that certainly had an impact. Along with that, we're down a linebacker. Muhammad was hurt. He had just played a little bit, but we're down a guy there. And I'm trying to think of who the other one was during the course of the game. There were 3 guys that were down, and so we're in position. We've got to make some adjustments there. But certainly losing Sean, because that was backed up, and I don't know if you even knew it. Our other tailback, DJ May, had torn his ACL on late on Wednesday's practice. So, you know, in short order, we were down 2 tailbacks. We had an opportunity to practice on Thursday, but then when we lost Sean, I think the 4th play of the game, that had a pretty significant impact today.
So Craig, I know you've been in coaching for a long time. Have you had a season where you've had this many injuries to so many frontline guys? Is this comparable to anything you've dealt with in the past?
One other year, and you know what you do the very best you can to it's an easy mantra to say next man up, but sometimes the next man up is not the best guy for that position, and so it's really important that each player that we put out there on the field, Robert, that we put them in position to be successful and instill confidence, and that's what we're about in the midst of today in those meeting rooms and coming up with a plan. But is it unusual? Yes, this is unusual to have this many. But what I've found through the years is typically there's ebbs and flows. You'll have a whole rash one year, and then the next year, I can remember one year I was at Duke. We went through a whole year and didn't lose a starter on either side of the football. So we're at where we're at, and we need to get these guys in position to come up with a game plan to go out and instill confidence for them to play. But you've got a guy like Will Two-Time. He's probably going to be playing a lot of meaningful reps against Fresno State that we didn't know anything about. He just showed up in fall camp, and so those are unique situations for a coach.
You've done this for so long. I mean, it's always
I'm starting to make you feel like I got an AARP card over here, Robert. I appreciate the compliment. Bang, got it.
I mean, when you look at it, I mean, you double rep guys. I know it's but you don't. Your middle of the season, do you go back or do you lean a little further back on what you do conditioning wise during the week to try to keep these guys healthy? Do you stick with the plan that's got you here? I mean, how do you kind of adjust that?
A lot of these injuries, really, when a guy breaks his hand, he broke his hand, or you do look at torn ACLs. We've had a somewhat of a rash on that. Coach DeVal and I have talked a little bit, not at length, saying, okay, what can we do? I do know that our guys need to be stronger, and we're in the process, and those are foundational things that, quite frankly, take several years to implement. And so we're looking at that, and then I think some of the injuries are just kind of freak things that occur.
Coach, you mentioned silver linings, and certainly Roofran at this point has caught up passing 45 straight games, which is the most in the country. Just how nice is it, I guess, to have that consistency every game where you know what you're going to get from a guy?
Thanks for bringing that up. I think not only Dominic, but our receiving corps as a whole has really achieved well in almost every game when Colby's been able to deliver the ball. And in the Colorado State game, we had a lot of big plays there, and there were probably a couple more out there that we didn't bring home. But Dominic has been a real joy to coach, along with a lot of other guys. And at times you forget the fact that he's got this record, and I think much of it could be attributed to his attitude. He's a very selfless player. He catches a pass, he's happy, and if he doesn't, I don't think he's over there doing the Randy Moss or anything like that. And so it makes these years enjoyable to have some guys like Dominic, and there's a whole group of those guys.
What made it, possible with having 4 touchdown drives in a row and some of those drives being 11, 13 plays like you like to have? Did anything change or did anything click there near the end?
Certain things as the game unfolded, and I think our coaching staff's always been fairly good as far as making second half adjustments, and so that came into play. And then some of those drives also got extended because of penalties against Colorado State, and so we took advantage of those.
Craig, I see Sonny on the depth chart, and I know he was in uniform last week but didn't play. Is he going to be able to go, or do you know his status as of now?
I would say he and Jesse, you might flip a coin. They're going to be game time decisions. We'll see how they progress during the course of the week, and I'll get in touch with him to let you know on that. Sonny, we're dealing with a nerve that's regenerating, and it's just on the timetable. I know this, if there's anybody that can be out there as soon as possible, it's going to be Sonny.
As far as Brian Hill goes, for someone to have that much to be kind of thrown into border war and that kind of environment, what did you see from him as far as maturity and being able to handle that situation and perform the way that he did?
It was all positive, but that was similar, if you remember, against Montana. He played in a real critical time of the game as we were coming down here, I believe in the north end zone, and excelled. And so we've been duly impressed with Brian. He's gone out and he's made progress as far as understanding our system. He's got good ability, but he's a real student of the game. And the other thing that I've noticed, that there has not been one situation that he's been placed in, whether it's on special teams or in a pass protection or some of the runs that have been called, that he shied away from the competition. And I think that not only speaks volumes about his physical attributes, but it talks about his emotional maturity too. He's a really mature, very focused freshman, a true freshman, and so I think he's got a bright future.
Craig, you see Josh listed behind Brian. It would be those top 2 guys. Is Omar Stover in that mix as the third guy?
We just didn't have a
right.
third, but Omar will be the third guy, and so we'll integrate Omar in the game plan this week.
Coach, I think you mentioned after the game how, with the defense's injuries, this is also an opportunity where you have to start to assess depth and everything, and just how much can you approach this as an opportunity for some of these young guys that you haven't seen as much in the game situations to be able to kind of prove themselves and show some things?
It depends on what the situation is on some of these guys, and that's why I was leading back to, is we integrate particularly a younger player in the game to give them an opportunity to be successful. And that doesn't mean that you can go ahead and script out everything that's going to come about, but it does. Would we like to have Mark Nazacha out there, who's on everybody's NFL board? Yeah, well, we don't, and that's going to give an opportunity for a guy like Jeff Lark to maybe play a little bit more. In the secondary, you've seen Will's been out there. And normally Will, if we wouldn't have double repped in fall, he wouldn't even be close to where he's at right now. Certainly Robert Priester's another guy. Brian is another guy. Many times those occurrences in game-like situations are invaluable, but there's also growing pains that go through that. And we're encountering some of those as well.
What are your impressions of Fresno early on film? I understand they're changing quarterbacks this week to a redshirt freshman who hasn't played a ton. How does that change things, and just what are your initial impressions of them right now?
Well, he has played a little bit. He played against Southern Utah, and so we've watched that. I know that he was a heavily recruited quarterback out of high school. He's one of the Elite 11. He was in the top 150 in the ESPNs. It was a blue chip recruit that they landed a couple years ago, and so he's obviously very capable. With it, they had a bye week, and so how much their offense changes, that's probably going to unfold during the first quarter. But the information that we know, I'm sure they're not going to have urban renewal with all kinds of new schemes. He's obviously very talented, and they wouldn't have put him in a starting position if they didn't believe in him.
Defensively, Craig, I know they've given up some points, and I know they played some good guys, some good teams too. Yeah. But what are you seeing defensively from them, where teams have been able to certainly move the ball and score on them, at least to this point?
I think first of all, let's look at some of the teams they played, because I think they've played some pretty outstanding football teams. And with that, I mean, they're a stunning defense that has all kinds of different looks. It poses all kinds of different problems, and at times that may have been some shortcomings for some points. But I would attribute more of those points, Robert, to the level of competition that they have played.
As far as positionally, or how do you kind of address those sort of breakdowns?
It's last week it was. We had a failure. The get-off time was fine. A couple things that you look at there, Mike. You look at your get-off time. You look at the trajectory of the kick, and you can see where even when a ball is kicked successfully, we're always mindful of that. And that was an error. It was a disappointing error that occurred on a schematic assignment, and so that's part of coaching. And that comes back to us, comes back to me as a head football coach, so we need to clean